Hi, thank you for joining us today on Earth Day. I am joined by Arron Welling from the Global Maritime Forum. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
He's the project manager of decarbonization and up in the operational efficiency and in the green corridors projects. So I'm so glad to have you here today and join us on Earth Day. We're going to talk a little bit about the projects that you're working with. Actually, you and I have been working together for over a year on the operational efficiency working group. So let's start there. So what exactly is the operational efficiency working group?
Yeah, the operational efficiency work at the Global Maritime Forum was conceptualized back in 2021. It was a group of industry leaders, top CEOs, at one of our annual summits in London. They got together and wanted to discuss what could be done now in the short term to reduce emissions. There's a lot of focus in the long term about green corridors and zero emission fuels, but not a lot of talk and focus on the short term. And that's where we sort of stepped in to facilitate this sort of work.
Yeah, super. I mean, I actually have been part of it, from almost the beginning, because we did a lot of work here at ZeroNorth on the immediate emissions. When you look at the decarbonization journey, there's like short, medium, and long-term goals. And as you mentioned, the green transition of fuels, also improvements on vessels, but the immediate emissions are things that we can do today that are reducing the emissions. So what are some of the things that you guys are targeting, or we are targeting as part of the operational efficiency working group?
Yeah, I think in the last 2 years, the main objective, at least with the work, has been to identify key actions that can be taken by companies to reduce emissions today. That can also contribute to the longer, broader ambition in the industry. And through that, I think in the last year, we produced 4 insight briefs, and they were focusing on a few different areas. It was the opportunity overall for operational efficiency. It was the role of data, pilot projects, and also the legal and contractual changes. And we published that in the form of insight briefs.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't we unpack those a little bit if we can? So I have 5 of them, right? The cultural and leadership. So can we talk a little bit about that?
So those were the 5 action areas. So last year, the work in GMF identified 5 key sort of enablers to unlocking operational efficiency.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And those were the ones that you're mentioning. So they were data collection and transparency, contractual changes, pilot projects, full value chain engagement, and culture and leadership.
Yes. And then we also talked a little bit about like the ports, the terminals, and the value chain.
Yeah, that's the full value chain engagement, in making sure that everyone is involved, that it's not just down to the ship owners and the charterers. There's got to be a lot more of the people in the discussion and around the table.
Yeah. So let's delve into those 5 areas if you can. I think that from a ports and terminals and value chain perspective, what are the kind of the challenges that we see in that area, and what are some of the levers that we have to unlock those opportunities there?
Yeah, I think at least what I would like to beginning to say, I think all 5 action areas are quite linked together in some way. Mm-hmm. So I think a level there is the role of trust and communication. So ports and terminals, and not just them, but the wider actors that are not mentioned in this particular action area, needs to be involved. And there's a level of this issue with trust and communicating, sharing data, and communicating across the full value chain.
Okay. What about the data collection and transparency? What does that entail?
So the data and collection, and definitely ZeroNorth can obviously advise a lot more than I can. But the data collection and transparency is the collection of data, but also the transparency, sharing it across the full value chain. This could obviously be in a lot of different things, but it could be, fuel consumption. It could be, vessel ETAs, when it should arrive in the ports. And this is where the full value chain sort of comes in. Are the charterers, the owners, the ports and terminals, are they communicating properly? They all collect data in one way, shape or form, but are they sharing it between each other? Are they getting the same standard of quality of data as well?
Yeah, I think at ZeroNorth, we look very heavily into that as well.
Yeah.
And recently with our joining forces of Alpha Ori, where we've, delved into high frequency data, which helps with the data quality as well, collection of it, making sure that the data itself is checked on vessels before it comes in, so they can optimize upon, quality data.
Yeah.
So, I think for me, I got involved in the operational efficiency working group because the partners that were there were in need of collaborating to come together in order to understand what kind of data was needed. Could there be standardizations in data? And that's something kind of we talked about as being like the next step in what's happening in the working group. So maybe we can talk about that, in a minute. And then as far as maybe the pilot projects, we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yep. Yeah, I think the pilot projects is an interesting one. It enables companies to demonstrate and provide sort of practical examples of what they need to do. It could obviously be a few different things. It can be certain speed optimization pilots like virtual arrival or just-in-time arrival. They help to sort of identify the key, what went well, what needs to be improved, but also to show to the rest of the industry that action is actually possible. And that's a really good thing as well with these projects.
Yeah, I think one of the things we discovered in the working group was that pilots were actually pretty difficult to initiate because specifically, and you're talking about how these different 5 buckets are related, the contractual obligations from the owners and the charterers, are what they are for specific reasons of, commercial value and business, opportunities. So how do you actually optimize and how do you create pilots that help to challenge the status quo in new ways? So can we create clauses for voyage optimizations? Can we create pilots around how that would look? Were there some pilots that actually, happened that showed some good results that then could, be utilized by other people that you can talk about?
Definitely in the report, there were some examples of pilots. I think also to mention in one of the insight briefs that I mentioned earlier, that was published last year, there was a lot of pilots, but they were more hindcast. So they're sort of retroactively looking back. If they change things, how would it look like? And the transition now, we saw a few more pilots being demonstrated, but I think there were still a lot of issues, and that was a sort of critical thing that was lacking within the report, is that there weren't enough pilots being demonstrated. And a few maybe reasons behind this is maybe one example is the 5 action areas. Implementing those steps can definitely help the scalability of these pilots. But I think, what we're dealing with here is a very old industry that has hundreds of years of inefficiencies, and it's a very hard to sort of tackle that and peel back the layers and find the root cause. And that's something that we're trying to look into with the initiative as well.
Yeah, and what you say is, a traditional industry, but of course there's first movers, and there's a lot of different initiatives that Global Maritime Forum is working on with the Getting to Zero Coalition and such like that, and Sea Cargo Charter that's bringing people together and of these first movers. I remember a webinar that I guess that we did for the operational efficiency when we were in Athens as part of the Global Maritime Forum's annual summit. And someone on the panel was talking about one of the pilots that they had run. Well, maybe they didn't do it in the piloting, but where they were sailing and they realized that their ETA had changed. And so they called up the cargo owners and they said, hey, we can actually slow down and arrive 10 days later. Would you like to split the proceeds from the fuel? And so they agreed to verbally do that, even though that wasn't part of the contract. So how do we, people are moving forward and are taking advantage of the opportunities. How do we make that more like scalable and widespread?
I think it's a really good question there. I think one aspect is these pilot projects actually getting some examples there. The thing with the charter parties, as an example, once you do it once, in theory, you can go back to the previous last done contract. So in theory, you only need to do it once or twice, a few times, and then you can always, that's part of the scalability part there. I think it's there's the role of trust as well. As you mentioned, benefit sharing, cost sharing. Who's going to pay is a huge question. And ultimately, that can only be decided by the actors themselves. It's not something that necessarily GMF is obviously involved in, but we can at least sort of facilitate, get the right people around the table, and get everyone discussing together what needs to be changed and how. Ultimately, it's with the industry to do.
Yeah. And I think, organizations like yours, Global Maritime Forum, is bringing people together.
Yep.
That's like a vast improvement as to, maybe 6 years ago when people were more siloed.
Yep.
So it's pretty impressive what you guys have achieved.
Thank you.
And I think that brings us to another point, which is around culture and leadership.
Yeah.
Because like you said, a contract as per last is
Yeah.
really typical practices. And as per last means basically you have a contract and you do it just like last time. So, we've talked about this today, how status quo is actually kind of stopping progress.
Yeah.
And I believe it's actually one of the main causes of, of stopping progress. So how do we create bold leadership that, takes a chance? There's something around the financial implications, right?
Yeah.
So how do we bridge the commercial with the environmental? And how do we make sure that the choices that we're making can lead our organization forward from the, every level? So can you talk a little bit more about like the culture and the leadership that's necessary for us to navigate our way to zero emissions?
Yeah, the culture and leadership as an action area in terms of what we've discussed within the working group is all about internal and external alignment. You have a lot of companies that have so many different departments. You have a chartering desk, but you have a trading desk. Lots of other. Some charterers also have their own ports and terminals as well. And believe it or not, from what we've heard from some of the stakeholders, that they all may be part of the same umbrella company, but they have some misalignment issues. They're not speaking the same language. They care about their own, and rightly so, but their own KPIs and goals and strategies. I think something needs to be done there to sort of align that with the leadership component as well. You mentioned it already, but having that bold leadership from these top executives externally, but also internally, to set an example of how things should be done. This obviously can be within the industry, but also externally, setting the precedent towards the rest of the industry, how you should take action.
Yeah, it's super interesting because you think it's like, it's one organization, everyone should talk together. I'm part of another working group with the energy majors. And, we're trying to unpack how it's done in each department. How do you actually measure the emissions you have? How do you make sure you have the right kind of data across in order to report on your regulatory requirements, but also on voluntary things like sea cargo charter and things?
Yeah.
And, they're like, you would think we would know how to do that, but we really have to, work together to understand each other's KPIs and break down those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. So how do these 5 areas kind of complement the wider, broader ambitions of the industry, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, the 5 action areas and overall the work that is done in GMF with operational efficiency contributes towards the wider ambitions and actions, the goals of the industry in 3 different ways. I think, that you can reduce emissions and fuel consumption now, so that can immediately contribute to the climate goals. Secondly, by implementing these measures, you can have some cost savings as well. And that can incentivize some companies to also invest in some greener solutions and practices. And thirdly, I think I would like to say as well, the idea of best practices. We've sort of spoke about that already today. And it's something that the initiative at GMF also like to promote, having this initiative and the platform to get everyone together around the table and sharing, key learnings that, can sort of encourage the rest of the industry to scale up and start working as well on operational efficiency, which then again, contributes to the wider goal as well.
Yeah. So, and in line with that, there was people that, helped create the operational efficiency kind of actions and recommendations. And there was also signatories who agreed to do that. ZeroNorth also was a signatory of that, one of, I think, 30 companies of the initial ones. Do you see these recognition of a need to act, the different kind of initiatives or the themes that each of these companies seem to be, working with?
Yeah, I think it's really great that, we received around 30 companies, taking recognition to act now towards operational efficiency. There is a necessity to act now. And compared to that as well, we published a report early this year in January, and it showed that there were 73 companies submitted 73 actions, which is really great to see that the industry is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think I was reading those 73 actions because I wanted to see what other people were working on. And, a lot of them were around digitalization and technology, adopting those to help them. There was things also around, they were joining Sea Cargo Charter, which was an initiative of the Global Maritime Forum. And then there was also around this like just on time arrival. There's ports was the last thing kind of the 5 initiatives that we haven't really delved that much into, but the ports have a big role to play. Yeah. And there's, a global industry of ports that are owned by different people with different fees, with different kind of, specifications, the terminals, the berths, those kind of things. And so if you are optimizing and figuring out which route to go and, you want to have an ETA, it's very important that there's alignment with the ports. I would say, I don't know, maybe we can talk a teeny bit more about that because there's, this is like a new kind of part where you're embracing the ports. The ports are coming together, aligning, around some initiatives. I don't know if you have, more information that you can share on that. If you know about what some of the things that ports are doing in order to do that.
Yeah, I think, it's a great...
I don't mean to put you on the spot. No. I'm just, curious.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I've mentioned already, the ports and terminals have a really key role to play, just like any other actor in the value chain. I can't speak for every project. I think that at least one thing that comes to mind is the Port of Rotterdam. They are working on a green corridor, but also a digital corridor. And that's something that we're seeing there, that some ports are taking an active role in trying to be efficient. I hope that answers your question a little bit. But...
Yeah, I'm actually part of navigating Zero, our podcast. I interviewed Saskia from the Port of Rotterdam, and I think we're actually showing that podcast today in part of our 12 hours. So if you're interested more in what ports are doing, you should listen to that one. Okay, so as we wrap it up, let's just talk 2 things. What do you hope the industry can do more of, as we celebrate Earth Day and look at how we navigate our way to zero?
Yeah, I think the best thing for the industry to do is to continue to collaborate, work together. We discussed this a lot in today's session, but they should continue doing that, but to remember to not leave those behind. Everyone is in together, and I think everyone is needed to make a difference.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it seems like people, are doing that. Yeah. And there was a topic around at the annual summit about the global South and getting them involved. And you guys were really good about bringing people's voices, into it and not just being like Europe who's involved. Yeah. So great. Okay. And do you have an Earth Day pledge of what you want to do? Can you share that with us?
I don't have a pledge, but now that you said it, I definitely will take some time to go away and think about it, especially, given that Earth Day is today. So I'll definitely have a think and think about that.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, and that's true. We can take time to reflect on what it is we can do in our everyday life. I would venture to say that you're doing a lot as being part of Global Maritime Forum. Yes. So anyway, I thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your insights. Thanks, Arron.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hi, so we're still here on Earth Day. I have another guest, Franco Andrade, who works in our design department. And so we have these things called Green Talk, which we provided in our digital toolkit for everyone around the globe. So we're going to try and see if we can answer some of them ourselves. They're meant for you to have at lunchtime to inspire different conversations around being an eco-friendly person in the world. So let's see. I'll pick the top card. Okay. So it says, reflect on the role of food choices in promoting environmental health and reducing ecological footprint. Okay, well, actually at ZeroNorth, we have a vegetarian lunch 3 days a week. So we have Meyer's Kitchen, and in Denmark, most of the workplaces actually provide lunches for people. So what did you think about that when you heard that we were going to eat vegetarian 3 days a week? To be friendly, because I guess the less meat you have, the better for the environment, the less CO2 emissions.
Yes, exactly. I think it's a great way to kind of try to contribute to less CO2 emissions, eating less meat. And
what did you think about the food?
I think it's pretty good, the food. I like meat myself, but I understand that it's important to reduce the eating less meat for the environment.
Yeah, I think one of the first weeks we had for a main course giant carrots, and then the plate came with like 3 carrots, and you're like, is that my lunch?
Yes, it can be quite surprising. Sometimes you don't have, it kind of surprises us many times.
Yeah.
But in the end, it turns out to be very delicious because there are different sauces that it's added. So it's not necessary to have meat in the plate to be good. I think it can be quite good.
Yeah. Does it make you feel better that you eat vegetarian 3 days, health-wise, but also environmentally wise?
Yes, definitely. Well, on my health, I think it just gets, I feel less heavy, and more, I think the digestion and everything, it's better. But of course, thinking that you are contributing for the environment, it's super great.
Yeah, and actually, I need to look up the statistic, but there was something that was significant. If everybody ate less meat 1 day a week in the world, it would make a huge difference, impact. So I will have to look that up, and maybe we'll share that in the notes or in another episode. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me in the Green Talk, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in Earth Day.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for joining us on Earth Day. We have an online session now because we have Sam Jha, who's our Senior Vice President and General Manager for our owner business unit for SMARTShip and ShipPalm, and he's joining us from California. So thanks, Sam, for joining us today.
Thank you, Laura. It's a pleasure to be here on Earth Day.
Maybe you can talk a little bit, and maybe I'm, delving in a little bit deeper now. Can you talk about data and high frequency data and why it is that high frequency data is more important than, just regular data or Noon report data?
Oh, that's a very good one. That's very close to my heart, that question. So we've always talked about data. So Noon report data, for example. Now, by the very definition of Noon report data, that it comes at noon, which is once in 24 hours. Now, whatever happens between those 24 hours, we sitting in offices, we don't have visibility to it, right? Because unless master or chief engineer calls us and lets us know what happened, that was the paradigm before digitalization. Now, with high frequency data coming in live, you are able to see what's happening on board the vessel in real time. And when you walk into the office, it's like walking into onto a factory floor or a shop floor where you are seeing live what's happening. So imagine a superintendent who manages, let's say, 6 vessels. He comes in the morning. He doesn't look at back in the days, he used to look at the fax machine, or nowadays he looks at the email. He doesn't do that. He just gets a cup of coffee, walks onto the floor and says, okay, let me visit my ship. He starts with the fleet analytics, fleet intelligence, looks at it, and then says, everything looks good. Let me look at this vessel that I was a little concerned about. And then he goes and takes a round on that vessel and looks at every parameter, looks at what happened in the last 8 hours, 10 hours when he was off, when any alerts came. And then if there need be, he chats with chief engineer, and he's not asking chief, hey chief, what happened last night or whatever. He's looking at the same data that chief is looking at, and he's talking to him and basically trying to solve the problem. So that is the importance of having a high frequency data coming to us. And also the trend, when you're looking at a trend, when you only see the consumption change in a noon report, you don't know what happened. There's no explanation. But when you look at the high frequency data, which is coming, every 30 seconds, every minute, you can look at what happened during that period and that the consumption changed. So that's how high frequency data gives us a lot more visibility into what is happening on board. Not only that, the most important part of it is it's a real-time visibility. So you can take real-time actions without having to wait for a noon report, which will come next day, and then you know what happened and they decide what actions need to be taken.
So it seems like you can not only get a lot of data, which maybe you can use for other aspects like building technology that's stronger, but also you're seeing trends within this data that helps you to make decisions about your vessel. You talked a little bit about being able to see things. I'm wondering, I've heard a little bit about predictive maintenance. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think that there's two things. There's vessels that are sailing on the water that are, optimal and new, but there's a lot of fleet out there that's really old. So, how can we utilize high frequency data in like both aspects?
Right. So when you're collecting high frequency data, of course, there are challenges. We can talk about challenges when you're ready to talk about that, Lora. But we have ways to overcome those challenges and collect that data. It's possible that you may have to add a few additional sensors to collect the data on a really old vessels, which doesn't capture all the parameters. But once you do that, you talked about predictive maintenance. What do you do with the data is important. It's one thing to collect the data and get all the data, but then if you don't have the right applications and right technology to actually make sense of the data, because it's a large amount of data that we are talking about. So in predictive maintenance, people can collect the data and see the slow degradation profile of an equipment. They can also see any anomalies, right? So anomalies are the first symptom of a bigger problem that will come your way that everybody knows. So when you see an anomaly, it's based on a baseline that has ship experience in the past in the similar weather conditions. Based on that baseline, when it sees anomaly, it also looks at the areas that can be causing that anomaly. And if you catch that, and do the required maintenance upfront, you're able to prevent any big further problems in the equipment or breakdowns. Now, not only that, the good predictive maintenance applications on the market also gives you the health score. It provides your asset at what health condition it is currently working. It can also, which is a great indicator to know if the equipment needs any kind of attending to. And the last, they have nowadays remaining useful life calculations. So even in our Asset AI applications, we have a remaining useful life calculations, which
Sam?
tells you how do you plan the overhaul and maintenance going forward.
Yeah, so that's what I just didn't, I hadn't heard that term before. It's overall lifetime maintenance, or what did you say it was?
It's called remaining useful life.
Remaining useful life. What does it mean?
So it basically means that when your equipment is running, based on the slow degradation profile that is being monitored by the application, what is a good life before there are chances of breakdown? So that means, that tells you that after these many running hours or after these many days, it's time to prepare for overhaul based on the data that you're collecting on every 30 seconds.
Okay, cool. Okay, that's something new. You mentioned a little bit about the challenges, because it seems to me that there's a lot of challenges in implementing kind of data-driven, initiatives. So can you let me know what some of the challenges are, and maybe like what are some of the mitigations or levers that you can utilize in order to mitigate those challenges?
Yeah. We can have a discussion on this for a very long time, but I'll be brief here. Implementing data-driven strategies in maritime operations to support sustainability initiatives and goals is never without its challenges, right? And the first and foremost, I think you started this session, Lora, talking about data quality and availability, right? So one of the primary challenges in ensuring the quality and availability of data is that maritime data may come from disparate sources, including onboard sensors, third-party providers, legacy systems. That leads to inconsistencies and gaps in data quality. And if there is a gaps in data quality, it's very hard to trust the system or the recommendation that system is providing. So ensuring data accuracy, reliability, and completeness is essential for making informed decisions and driving meaningful improvements in sustainability. So data quality remains huge. Now, the next one that I'm going to talk about, next challenge, which is even bigger, is the data integration and interoperability. Because if the systems don't talk to each other, you can't really achieve your goals. So integrating data from various sources and systems poses a significant technical challenge. Now, what do I mean by that when I say? Listen, maritime companies may struggle to harmonize the data formats, the standards, the protocols. When you look at just the protocols, these OEMs, they have, there are, like, I can name a few for you: NMEA protocol, Modbus protocol, OPC UA, CANopen, MQTT, TCP/IP. There's so many different protocols, and they don't talk to each other, right? So navigating through that, building a parser that can read every protocol so that it becomes seamless to you, that actually will drive the entire effort in much more cohesive manners, and the convergence will happen. So overcoming these interoperability barriers require investment in data integration technologies and industry-wide collaboration on standardization efforts. And again, I don't want to bore you with standardization thing, but that's also important, because many people even though they're providing, let's say you've overcome the protocol challenges and data is flowing. Now, just to give you an example, somebody writes main engine exhaust gas temperature cylinder number 1. Great. The other guy writes the same thing. MEEXHGASTEMPCYL1. Now you and I know they're talking about the same thing. The system doesn't know. System doesn't have that capability to decipher different languages. So what we do is that we standardize those, and standardization is the key for interoperability and different systems talking to each other.
Yeah, I mean, standardizations, I know it sounds really geeky, but is one of the things that I really love, because I think that our future really is about utilizing technology and have data that we can use seamlessly across. And that is totally impossible unless we have standardizations. The naming conventions, the formats of the data, and even down to like, where is a port located? I know when we started building voyage optimization, there were so many different GPS coordinates that the computer didn't realize that this port was the same as that port. So I think it's a challenge of our industry, that has so many different ways of collecting data and so many different stakeholders who are asking for you to do many different new reports, that likely, some sort of standardization, but also some sort of platform that will help you to collect one data and then share it across is kind of, the way we're heading forward.
Absolutely critical. Yes.
Yeah.
Do you want me to talk about more challenges? I don't want to scare people.
No, I mean, as long as you're talking about solutions as well, then, feel free to throw another challenge at me.
Absolutely. And we have spent years building those integration and interoperability. So there are solutions out there in the market that exist for sure. The other challenges, which I'm sure you've heard about, data breaches, etc., and that you keep hearing. So cybersecurity and data privacy is another challenge that I think the companies need to navigate through.
Yeah.
The increasing digitization of maritime operations raises concerns about cybersecurity in everyone's mind. Maritime companies must safeguard sensitive data against cyber threats, unauthorized access, and data breaches, because this can lower the confidence and become a big barrier to implementation if people don't trust that their data will be safe. Like implementing robust cybersecurity measures and adhering to data protection regulations, such as GDPR, etc. This is essential to mitigate risks. And again, there are solutions available out there in the market, and some of them, many breaches that you hear, some of them you will be surprised to hear they are really lower level. They use lower level, that password management, correct password management that people don't use. And that's how they get access to systems. So if the companies make some efforts in this, this will go a long way in creating the trust and saving their, safeguarding their data. The another big challenge that we want to talk about, Laura, and this is a good one for shipping companies to prepare their workforce, is about skills and talent gap. Now, data-driven decision-making requires specialized skills and expertise in data analytics, because unless you analyze the data and you understand the data that comes out of a machine learning algorithm and data visualization that is enabled in the back end by AI-enabled data, it's difficult to trust that. And if you don't trust that, people don't take actions. Therefore, maritime industry right now faces, in my opinion, shortage of talent of these skills. Particularly in the maritime specific context, you can hire an engineer from Google. That won't help because that person will not have a domain knowledge. So our companies, our shipping companies, have to develop their own data experts, someone who can read the data, who can understand machine learning and data visualization and take action on that. that's critical to success.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, because I mean, I think when we first started ZeroNorth, for us, it was really about having this expertise in maritime and the expertise in technology and kind of marrying that together, but also being a partner for our customers who didn't really have technology experts, in their companies. So there is a talent gap, but there's also this knowledge that needs to be transferred, because we can't just come in and say, here's a technology that you need to utilize, but they don't understand how to utilize it, right? So how do we help the change management for the companies that maybe aren't as advanced within technology?
Very well said, Laura. Because if we just go with a bunch of data and people don't understand it, it will be not the right combination. So what we have tried to do is try to solve them by becoming their thought partner. So at ZeroNorth, we become their thought partner. We have a customer success managers who go and continuously interact with our customers and provide and make them understand what does this data mean, how does it help them in taking actions. Now, we've also seen certain trends in the industry that, having been interacting with us for some time, they've decided to invest in their own people. Many companies are hiring a new position called Chief Digital Officer. Now, this position, I'm sure 5 years ago, 10 years ago, did not exist in many companies, but you'll start to see lots such positions coming in, where they are hiring a digital expert internally who work with software company, technology companies, and tries to implement that within their own company and be the first go-to individual who can solve their digital needs while partnering with external vendors. So that's the trend that I'm seeing quite a bit, Laura, nowadays.
And I think that's super interesting. I mean, certainly there's this transition, which is the green transition, the energy transition, the digital transformation that's happening as well. And how do you marry the, commercial with the environmental strategic initiatives of a company? And so I think that even I'm seeing in a lot of companies this, new position around head of decarbonization, which started popping up about, 3 to 5 years ago, where a lot of companies were saying, okay, now we need a specific person looking at decarbonization. And I wonder, actually, because now that the greenhouse gases are expanding to be beyond carbon, are they going to have to, change that role to head of greenhouse gases? Or I don't know, what do you think? Head of emissions?
Yeah, it's an important one. I want to start answering this question, Laura, saying that we have only one planet, and so far, whatever we've seen with James Webb Telescope and Hubble and every other telescope, we've seen in many light years away from us, and we have not yet found another planet which can be inhabited by us. So we have only one planet, and we have to do all that we can to safeguard that planet. Now, having said that, maritime industry is responsible for 3 to 4% of emissions, total emissions worldwide, and it has set a very aggressive goal to cut emissions by half by 2050 and move towards zero emission. Now, data is a critical part of ensuring the success in this movement, because data helps you provide actually it helps you monitor the progress, track the progress that you're making on day to day towards your emission goals. Data quality and data reliability is key in ensuring meeting the emission standards that we are setting for ourselves. So when the compliance and reporting happens, we ensure that we are moving towards the right goal for compliance and reporting. So therefore, I think we have to work our data capabilities and the applications that work on that data capability that can really help us cut emission goals through various means, through optimizations, through taking real-time actions and data-driven decision making. It helps us move towards that goal. Am I answering your question correctly?
Yeah, I mean, I think you are. I mean, thank you for bringing in, us to focus on actually what we're here for today on Earth Day, is to bring awareness to what's happening already in our industry to reduce the emissions, but also like what more needs to be done. And, and what are some of the things that are actually moving us forward? So data and technology is one of them. How do we adopt those? And maybe since we're running out of time, I was thinking that maybe I can ask you personally about your pledges and what you are going to do on this Earth Day.
Well, I'll talk both about personal and professional pledges. So personally, at my home, I drive EV. But the second vehicle is still running on fossil fuel. So as a family, we have made a decision that we will replace that with an EV this month. So
Great.
That is our personal level commitment. Mm-hmm. At a professional level, I am targeting to reduce my carbon footprint on travel, especially business travel, because as part of business, we travel a lot. So I am taking many online meetings, and pandemic has trained us that online meeting can be equally useful and in many settings. But also when I fly now, I look at the flights with lowest carbon footprint, and I've decided that I will be selecting the flights with lowest carbon footprint for my future travel.
Great.
Hope that's a small drop in this big ocean.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we talked about, today, or we may talk about later, is, really about how do our actions really matter? And if everyone makes a small action, our collective actions make a bigger impact on the earth, right? So whatever we do is enough, and we have to be proud of what we do. And certainly working at a company like ZeroNorth, our company is trying to make global trade green. So every day at our work, we also do that as well. So I have some personal pledges, which I'm going to share later as well. So with that, I thank you so much for joining me today, for sharing your personal pledges, and also for enlightening us a little bit more about how data and high frequency data can help us navigate our way to zero emissions.
Well, thank you, Lora, for having me. And I'm super excited that our company is really focused and investing in ensuring a sustainable future for all of us.
Thank you. Well, have a really nice day.